Columbia Pacific Communities is a company that is breaking the ageist stereotypes and is shining the spotlight on various challenges faced by the elderly. With this understanding, they're building real estate with the objective of creating happy communities. Today, we speak with Mr. Mohit Nirula, who is a veteran from the hospitality industry and now leads Columbia Pacific Communities as their CEO for the last 5 years. So, Mohit, welcome to BW Healthcare World. Thank you so much for taking out time. My first question to you is that senior care as a concept has been there for a very, very long time. We've always had people taking care of their elderly, but the industry got organized few years ago with assisted living spaces. Some facilities are focused on renting the space, some are selling the space, some people are targeting those with Alzheimer's, etc. Can you share what are the different models that exist in senior care and what is the focus of Columbia Pacific Communities?
All right. So I'll have to give a little bit of a longer answer to this. You see, culturally in India, parents look after their children when they're young, and children look after their parents when they're older. Purani reet hai. It's not today. If you go back and read mythology, there is Shravan Kumar who carried his parents on his shoulders, and therefore culturally that is what is India, right? Any business which is modeled on parents living away from children is a non-starter if the competition is the possibility of parents and children living together, right? So that's the cultural context in which we must understand this. However, whilst the culture in India hasn't changed, circumstances have changed. India, and especially middle class and above India, actually every Indian knows that the key to higher quality of life, a better quality of life, is education. And therefore, you will find that every generation has educated their children better than they had themselves. And if their children are doing better, it's because they've used that key to open the next level of quality of life. What happened in the last two generations, Harbinder, is higher levels of education got combined with globalization. And therefore, children got this opportunity to grow and take their careers to any country and everywhere across the world. So whether it was small cities or big cities, children started to move away from home cities to pursue the careers. And parents took a lot of pride in seeing their children fly. Now, both these parties are not living together, right? So it's not as if there is no love. It's not as if every family is a Bagban story where maa baap ko separate. Nothing. Because, this abandonment and all of this is better news than all the love that exists. People think this is what is happening. But that's not true. Culturally, there is no change. Circumstantially, it's a completely new India. Parents and children are living separately. Now, when parents and children live separately, parents and both are happy, children want to do right by the parents want to do right by the children, but circumstances have kept them separate. In this niche where staying alone is bad idea, loneliness is an accelerator of aging, where your social life becomes dependent on so many other external resources, is the opportunity that lies with senior living communities. Right? Senior living communities allows both these generations to live their life to the fullest, knowing that those that they care for are having peace of mind because they are in a place where all their needs are looked after. Now, in this, you can fit in independent senior living, assisted living, and mental acuity care, etc. That you can fit into that. But the first fundamental thing is, if children and parents are living together, there is no business model. Circumstances have moved them away, and in that space that gets created is the peace of mind for both generations because they know the parents are in good hands. Coming back to your specific question, you see, as we age, we can move from 55 now to 95 or 105, right? In fact, I was reading that the person who will live to 150 has already been born. Now, I don't know whether that's good news or bad news. Good news lies in being able to be healthy for that entire duration. And for us, that's all about positive aging. And what does positive aging consist of? It is an approach to life which removes the number from aging, right? We'll speak about it further. So a senior living community should be able to give you, whether you're at 55 or 95, an environment which takes away all your headaches and gives you the confidence of being able to dedicate your life to doing what you want to do rather than the sirdardi of having to do things that you have to do, right? And depending on 20 other people. We'll get into the details of independent, assisted, and mental later.
Got
But
it.
I hope I've kind of explained where it
Absolutely.
fits in.
Absolutely. I love the aspect of positive aging. Uh, that's a very beautiful thought. So, Mohit, what Columbia Pacific Communities is doing is basically an intersection of hospitality, real estate, and healthy living, right? Uh, do you only sell the properties, or do you and manage them, or do you rent these out too? And how does your model work at Columbia Pacific Communities?
So, and you said it exactly correctly. It's a third real estate, a third hospitality, and a third healthcare. And really, there isn't any industry in India which has this combination when all three are actually established industries in their own sense, right? When now understand that our principals are the Columbia Pacific Group based out of the US, and their expertise has been in real estate, in senior living for the last 4 decades. For the last 40 years, they've run the biggest senior living communities and companies in North America, Europe, China, Malaysia, etc. Right? When they came into India, they had an option to build the DNA of the company around either a real estate expertise leader or a hospitality expertise leader or a healthcare expertise leader. The head of the company had to come from one of these three spaces. But the success of our business lies not in creating the best homes, lies not in creating the best healthcare. It actually lies in creating the best service environment, which relieves our residents to live life to their fullest, right? And therefore, now I'm not saying I'm the best thing that's happened to hospitality since sliced bread, but what I am saying is that they chose a person who'd worked for 31 years in hospitality with the Oberoi Group to lead the company because it is their belief. And now that I've been in this for 5 years, if you don't have happy residents, the business is finished. You can build the best home, nobody will come in. You don't want a hospital, you want a community. And communities are created by happy residents, and happy residents are built on service. So we are actually neither healthcare, nor hospitality, nor real estate. We are a service business. We are in the business of serving our seniors. We fill the role in physical presence that their children can't fill with their physical presence.
So, Mohit, I still need clarity. Are you selling these homes or are you renting these homes?
Very good question. You see, at this point in time, because of the cost of land and the cost of capital, rent alone does not make a good business model, right? Internationally, lease is the way it goes forward, where people lease a home for a longer period of time. At this point in India, we are working on the for sale model. So we buy a piece of land, we design a community, and design's a very critical part of this community. And then in that community, we provide all these services. In order to get access to the services that you need, they buy a home in this community. So from that point in time, it is exactly as a residential real estate model, People buy a home, they sign a service agreement with the service provider, and they enjoy those services in that home forever, is the way the model is. So it's definitely a for sale model. But Harbinder, this is for the independent living. This is where people come into the community at the age of 55, 60, 65, and then they live with us forever, right? There are some people who didn't have this option because this is a relatively new business. So for them, we are creating what are called assisted living communities. And that's where the difference of your first question as to what's the difference between the two. Assisted living is normally where you are now unable to do your own personal activities of daily living. Internationally, it has a different connotation. You see, internationally, if somebody comes to clean your house, that's called assisted, right? Because over there, you do it on your own, right? So if somebody has to come and clean it, it's called assisted. In India, हम तो पैदा ही assisted में होते हैं, right? For a little while, mother will say कि अब तू independent हो जा, but second day she will come and say कि cook लगवा देती हूँ, etc. You know, खाना बन जाएगा तेरा. So the point I'm making is, assisted in India is when you can't do your own things. So when I'm going for a bath, I feel unstable. I need you to stand outside and just make sure I come out after I've had my bath. As you age, it may reach to help me with my bath. It could be help me get ready. I can't plait my hair anymore. Help me with the pleats of the sari. Put the gajra in my hair. When you can't do your personal activities, when you want somebody to hold your hand when you're walking, that's the stage of assisted living. Now, if you had moved into an independent senior living community at the age of 55, we can take care of these things as you age. But if you've not moved in and you've been living on your own, but now don't want to invest 60 lakhs, 70 lakhs, a crore to buy a home, you can move in on a rent into an assisted living community and stay there. So both models are available. My recommendation is always to move into an independent living community when you are making the choice to do so rather than having no choice to do so. Right? So move in when you want to, not when you have to. And when you move in when you want to, you can continue in an independent living community for way deep into your life because you are with your friends and we can keep adapting our service levels to suit your requirements. But if you're 80, 85 already, right, and you don't want to spend that kind of money, then you can rent in an assisted living facility. So that's the two models. Independent living is a for sale model. Assisted living is a for rent model.
So, tell me, Mohit, in your experience, where does it get initiated from? Is it the parents who initiate them moving into this kind of a property, or is it the children who feel that they would want to help their parents move into this kind of an environment so that they can have a safer lifestyle, safer and healthier lifestyle?
Yeah. I'll tell you the data. We currently, as India's largest senior living providers and creators of communities, we have the privilege of serving 3,000 seniors in about 1,600 homes, right? All of these, 98% are financially independent. They don't depend on their children for any of this. All of them have taken the decision to move into communities or say that this is the solution for me themselves. What I'm finding is, as more and more seniors, I'm 56, my daughters live and work in the UK. I'm today part of the company. Tomorrow also I will be a part of the company, but as a resident, right? Because I'm already starting to think of what will life be as I get older and where do I want to be at that point in time. The other interesting thing, Harbinder, and it's slightly digressing, with me, we will be 2 or 3 friends moving into the same community. What I'm finding with our current communities is that we are having 2 or 3 people coming together looking for that solution, because you start with your own little community and you expand into the bigger community. So to answer your question, seniors are looking for it themselves. When seniors start looking for it themselves, sometimes they've not even discussed it with their children. Remember, both parties are very sensitive to having this conversation But both at the back of their mind are worrying about it and wanting to give peace of mind to the other party. Right? So the children will never talk to their parents saying, "Ab aap move karo." Right? So normally we find that for independent living communities, the driver of the decision is the parents and it is supported by the children. For assisted living communities, the driver of the decision is the children and it is accepted by the parents, because by the time you reach 75, 80, 85, you don't want to leave all the familiar things around your house. But your children are really worried about, who's looking after you. And if the person doesn't turn up tomorrow, maid nahi aayi, driver bimar ho gaya, then who's there, right? So therefore they are saying, या तो हम वापस आ जाते हैं, या फिर आप हमारी बात मानो. So assisted living is driven by the second generation, accepted by the first generation. In independent living, it's the parents who take all the decisions and the children then support it, saying, and remember, the children are normally in the West and in the more developed part of the world, and they are seeing this as a very viable, good solution in the industry that is already well established over there. So they're very supportive. Once the parents will initiate it, they are never the ones to say, "Aap dekho, please."
Well, Mohit, this brings me to a very a thought, and which I want to ask you as a question. You said you're 56 years of age. You are working in an environment where your approach or understanding or thought process as somebody who's aging gradually would have transformed or changed because of your interaction with such kind of people. And you are understanding their needs because of your requirement for work. Is there a mindset shift that you're finding among this age group? And you're fortunate to be a part of the industry, but what is the kind of a mindset shift that you feel should be driven to this age group? Because like you said, the circumstances are changing. I mean, people are traveling, people are living independently. You don't have large family support systems like our elders have seen. So what is that mindset shift?
Mindset shifts don't happen in 4 or 5 year periods. I've been in this vertical for about 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in February, right? Mindset shifts do not happen in 5 year time periods. But if you will see, we are 9 of our communities, 7 of them are in Tamil Nadu, right? Tamil Nadu is a couple of generations ahead of the rest of the country in the acceptance of this as a solution, right? Now, when you think about why is it India, I, of course, have the absolute advantage and the privilege of talking to our residents to say, आपने दो generation पहले कैसे सोच लिया है, right? And really what it has distilled down to me is 2 things. Unlike the North, right? And both you and I come from the North. Families started to become smaller in size earlier, right? And therefore, what happened was the ability to depend on Tayaji and Chachaji started to disappear a couple of generations earlier because the families became smaller earlier in the South. In Punjab, in Haryana, and everywhere, we still had large families 2 generations above us. The second thing was that education became the key to the next level of quality of life earlier, and people started to go overseas earlier in white-collar jobs. In the North, agriculture was still seen to be the key for better life, right? Hor land le lo seemed to be the approach. And when that started to get fragment as the generation started to go, people went overseas, but not for white-collar jobs, right? It's that if you will see, even overseas, the Northern Indian is moving into white-collar 1 or 2 generations after the Southern Indian over there, right? And therefore, what has happened is, once you are alone, the realization of this need and of this solution comes straight away. one of the one of the consequences in this 5 years, which has accelerated the change in thought process, was COVID. For those 2.5 years, seniors living alone, north, south, east, or west, those living alone in villas or in mixed family condominiums, had a terrible, terrible, terrible time fending for themselves, because all the people that they depended on were cut off for long periods of time. Till now, bulb fuse ho gaya hai, nahi aaya electrician is a couple of days story. But the maid has not come now for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because there's a lockdown, was a new realization, right? And I'll give you the smallest examples. My parents were really upset that the newspaper stopped coming. Their day won't start without the newspapers. And early in COVID-1, they said sunlight kills the virus. So we used to get the newspaper, spread it out in the park. After 2 hours, at 10 o'clock, we would go and deliver it to the room. And everybody's happy, mera newspaper aa gaya. This stark contrast between what seniors living on their own went through versus what seniors living in senior living communities went through hugely accelerated the demand and the realization for this solution. So in our current 9 communities, we have a waiting list. People want to enter through repurchase or tenancy. Any offer they are happy to take. And for our new communities, the average age of the person looking for it has come down. Our youngest buyer is 48 years old. So it is changing. COVID accelerated many things. This was one of the things that it has accelerated. But culturally, we will not change. So if parents and children are living together, they're not suddenly going to say, chalo, chalo, aap udhar chalo, hum idhar chalte hain, etc. But parents living on their own or children living away from their parents, they have changed far ahead of the other. So whenever you will feel that nahi, ye change nahi hua hai, I can bet you're talking to parents who have the option to live with their children, or vice versa. Anybody who's not and is not seeing that trend is very open to the idea. You know what we say, Arvind? People who don't want this solution, you can't convert them. People who want this solution, you can't stop them. Sales to aise hi hai naam ka.
No, I completely resonate with what you're saying, and I can imagine what could be the scenario. But what also comes to my mind, Mohit, is that what happens when you are trying to build a community of aging population, right? Like you said that your youngest buyer is 48 years of age. The needs, the lifestyles, etc., are very different from somebody who has bought this because of a healthy aging, right? How do you manage that? I mean, what happens when the inhabitants move out and the newer ones coming in, the children inherited the property? How do you manage that environment conducive for the elderly?
Okay, so as I was saying, the community is designed with seniors in mind, which means that everything that seniors need is there, but everything that a youngster needs is not necessarily there. So for example, if you want a squash court, we don't have that. If you want a badminton court, we don't have that. If you want a tennis court, we don't have that, because these games are not kind on the knees, right? So now, even though we don't say that you have to be this age to be able to come into the community, right? We find that our communities are desired by those who want the entire solution. Now, when you're 55 and 60 and there is a 24/7 nurse, an ambulance on standby and an ambulance, you appreciate and you're happy to pay for that, right? When you're 25, 30, 35, 40, you believe you are unbreakable. मतलब आप गिरोगे तो मार्बल टूटेगा, आपको कुछ नहीं होगा, right? So you don't appreciate the need for those things. So you won't come into this community. Now, because it's a real estate asset, because it was owned by the person living there, and once they have moved on to be with the Almighty, this asset still remains and moves like any real estate asset to the next of kin. Next of kin is free to move in. But normally, like you remember, we said they're in all over the place. They have the option to ask us to sell it on their behalf, or find sellers for them, or rent it for them. And as I have said to you, we have a waiting list, right? So immediately all they need to do is tell us, can you help with it? And within our team, we have a team which looks after rentals and resales, and they support the next of kin in achieving whatever they wish to do. They want to retain it, they want to rent it, or they want to sell it. Everything we can support for them.
So what I hear is that the community has been designed in such a way that it is more useful to someone who's at that age group. So
100%.
that's how you are meant.
The smallest of things, and you remember I mentioned design is an issue. When take your parents to any elevator, and you will find you'll hold their elbow with one hand and the door with the other. Standard operating procedure है, ऐसे ही जाते हैं हम, अंदर भी ऐसे ही घुसते हैं, बाहर भी ऐसे ही निकलते हैं, right? Why is that? Because the doors shut on the average movement of a youngster. Seniors take longer, so our elevators are designed to stay open longer because you won't be there to take them, na? So they should not be worrying कि वो दरवाजा बंद हो जाएगा. You will notice that when you come out of the elevator, your parents always stumble, even though you're holding them, and you kind of say, क्या हो गया? Level ठीक नहीं था, but level भी ठीक है. The light in the lobby is brighter than the light in the elevator. The eyes take time to adjust. Depth perception changes for the elder. They will stumble. You think it's got to do with other things, but so in our community, the light in the elevator and the light in the lobby is the same level. So your eyes don't need to adjust. Major design changes have to happen.
Oh, this is very beautiful because it did not even come to my mind that these small things can really make a difference. So, Mohit, how big is the market size for? I mean, I hear you when you say that there are more takers than sellers, but how big is this opportunity across the nation?
So, I mean, because it's a relatively new industry, the data is not always up to date. CII did a big study in 2018, and their numbers were in urban India, a demand for 200,000 homes in senior living communities was the demand in 2018. Homes in different stages of development were 20,000. 10x was the gap between demand and supply. In the 4 years that have passed, we've had COVID, which has taken demand up. Construction slowed down, so supply has slowed. Now, also remember in these 4 years, India adds between 5 to 6 million seniors every year. Children going overseas and to other cities to work has not reduced, right? So this supply-demand gap has gone out of whack completely. And it will never get bridged, never, because I start building today, it takes me 3.5 years. In 3.5 years, I will add 250 homes. India will add 15 to 18 million seniors. हम सब घर बनाने लग जाए ना, फिर भी नहीं होगा. That's how big the gap is.
So, Mohit, we are talking of all this in the large cities, the affordability. But people are growing old in tier 2, tier 3 as well. And we know that, tier 2 and 3 also has a population that has affordability, right? So are you or anyone else in the country looking at the tier 2 or tier 3?
Listen, because we are now the biggest and we are expanding at the rate that we are, I do get calls from tier 2, tier 3 cities who want to create these. My ability to expand to tier 2 and tier 3 is limited by the bandwidth, management bandwidth, equity bandwidth, and everything else that our company has. I know the demand is there. For example, we are in Bangalore. We've got one operating community, one which will open in January, and a third one which will launch by January. Between these three, I know Bangalore will forever have 3 Columbia Pacific communities on offer and on sale, besides the one that are operating forever, from now to kingdom come. Chennai, 2 to 3, Pune, 2 to 3, Bombay, 2 to 3, Greater Bombay, 3 to 5. All of these cities will have 2 to 3 Columbia Pacific communities on sale and under construction from now to kingdom come. Now, either I expand my bandwidth or other players keep filling up the place where the demand is. Now, maybe an Indore or a Bhubaneswar will have a demand for one forever, right? It may not be three forever, but it'll be one forever. Whoever goes in over there with a first mover advantage and establishes themselves as credible service providers can then sit in Bhubaneswar and do this business forever. Right? So there is demand. The only thing that you have to be conscious of is the price points at which you bring it in. This is a solution which works for those who are in their day-to-day lifestyle, depending on others to do work for them. There's a person who's cleaning, a person who may be cooking, a gardener who comes, a security guard, etc. They are using these facilities already. When they move into a senior living community, the economies of scale keep it affordable, right? But if there are people who are doing all of this work on their own, if they move into a community, it is obviously unaffordable, right? So I submit to the fact that it is not for the entire spectrum of population. Equally, it is not for the ultra rich. The ultra rich say, I will bring all of these facilities to my existing home because I can afford to. If the dependability is an issue, कि कल maid आई कि नहीं आई, I will keep 3 maids. एक तो आई जाएगी because I can afford it. So it's not for the ultra rich. It's not for the below a certain class where they are not depending on others for services. But there is a massive middle class, right? And if you see, the massive middle class are the ones who are living alone because they've kind of really focused on education to drive their children's success. That's where this solution sits in perfectly.
You're majorly in south of India, and like what I had heard you say that you're moving towards Pune and maybe towards Mumbai. What about North India? Do you have any plans of coming into North India?
There is never say never, but like I said, we are a function of our bandwidth and our so our current focus areas, at least for the next 2-3 years. And again, Harbinder, remember the gestation period. If I start talking now, my first community in North India will open in 2026, right? So that's the gestation period. Our current focus is from Ahmedabad to Calcutta, right? But with the compass moving southwards. So from Ahmedabad to Calcutta and everything in the south, what we will need to go to the north is a strategic partner who wishes to do multiple projects rather than the one-off or the two-off, which is how we are also doing the south. The beauty, the other thing that you have to remember is, like I said, happiness and success lies in the happiness of the residents. And we need to be confident that we know what their needs are. The North senior citizen and the South senior citizen lives their day very differently. My services need to gear to these different expectations. I am more comfortable working because the West, South, and East is closer to each other than the South to the North in terms of how we spend our day, what we want to do, etc., and how we react if we are not happy. I want to stick closer to the knitting for the time being, but who knows?
So, Mohit, you use the word that you're looking at happy residents, right? Now, happiness at this age is not just about being physically fit or getting all the services. It is also about mental wellness, which is companionship, uh, meditation. I mean, India has varied mental well-being. So how are you building or maintaining an ecosystem which includes mental well-being of these residents? I mean, you also see that they're losing their friends. So it plays a very, very impactful, in their head.
Listen, I cannot agree with you more. And a phrase of positive aging had resonated with you when we started this conversation. We have built positive aging around 6 pillars. Physical, and I'll just give you the example of physical so you know how much detail we have gone into it. Physical is not just about physical fitness. We've divided, not we, science has divided physical fitness into 4 components. Strength, which is how much can you do. Stamina, which is how long you can do it for. Flexibility, which, as you know, as you age becomes difficult. And balance. So we divide physical health into these 4. You can actually numerically measure what your and my performance on these 4 is. There is nothing that says that if I'm 56, I should be worse at 66. If I'm worse at 66, it means I have to review what I did between 56 and 66. If I do right things between 56 and 66, I could be better at 66 than at 56. Forja Singh was not running his marathons at 25, right? He started to run them at 75. So the point I'm making is that's the first pillar of positive aging. Mental health, second pillar. Intellectual health, the ability to learn, the desire to learn new things. शोले में इतना सन्नाटा क्यों है भाई कि टाइम हवा क्यों नहीं चल रही थी? Right? Intellectual engagement, third. Social interaction, fourth. Right? Spiritual is fifth. Nutrition is the foundation of all of this, is sixth. Now, on all these 6, we have to do. I did not know that physical had these 4 parameters. So the first thing we have to do is create awareness about the 6 pillars of positive aging amongst our residents. And the beauty with our residents is once they know something new, they get passionate about it, right? They are competitive. Sir, on 26th of January, to celebrate the 75th anniversary of our independence, 75-year-olds from our communities are doing a relay race of 75 kilometers to celebrate that day. Right? What are we talking about? Right? So somebody will walk 3 kilometers, somebody will hand over the baton to the next 75-year-old who will walk 4 kilometers. And like that, we will cover 75 kilometers with 75-year-olds to celebrate our 75th anniversary. So the awareness building is part 1. Having a calendar which creates the opportunities for all of this to happen, whether it is physiotherapy sessions, whether it is, you'd say, Sudoku competition. Huge work over here, right? When you talk of Tambola, you might think Tambola is, hum to sabhi khelte hain. But for a senior, it is about hearing. It's about processing that number. It's knowing which line to find it in. The hand-eye coordination to cut it, and then to remember, jaldi 5 mein mera 1 bacha hai. Next pe mere ko bolna hai. Right? Now, you might think har Wednesday ko hausi khila dete hain. But it's part of that 6 pillars and a calendar which has been designed. So if we are watching Zanjeer on the coming Friday, there is a 20-minute chat on the various scenes in the movie that the director has thought about differently before everybody watches the movie. So people are intellectually engaged. Picture to sabne dekhi hui hai. Right? So these are the 6 pillars that drive positive aging, which means you are healthier for longer. Jana sabne hai. It's about how fit you are on the day that you go.
So, Mohit, the other thing that comes into our mind is to run this kind of a facility. It is, you need to have not only trained manpower in terms of their understanding of elderly people, but also having the mindset. How easy is it, or how difficult is it for you to find the trained manpower that you require for this industry? And so what is it that you do about it?
So, Harbinder, what I've learned in my 31 years in hospitality and in the 5 years over here is that sometimes we just overcomplicate things to pay ourselves more money. Every Indian born into an Indian family knows Atithi Devo Bhava. मेरे घर मेरे अंकल आएंगे तो मेरे को उनको ध्यान रखना है. मेरे घर पापा मम्मी का तो बिल्कुल रिस्पेक्ट करना होता है. तो ट्रेंड तो हम है ही ना, इसमें और क्या ट्रेनिंग है. when people used to come to our house, हम उनके लिए कमरा साफ कर देते थे. हॉस्पिटैलिटी में हमने उसको हाउसकीपिंग बना दिया और मार इतने सारे स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स बना दिए. राइट. बाथरूम भी साफ करके नया सोप रख देते थे. यही करते हैं होटल वाले भी. राइट. खाने के लिए हमको पता होता था कि ताया जी को बैंगन भरता बड़ा पसंद है. आजकल कोई गेस्ट हिस्ट्री है, डेटाबेस है, लाइक्स एंड डिसलाइक्स हैं, एटसेट्रा है. राइट. सब हमने सीखा हुआ है. All you need to do is recruit with care. If you see, there are two things that drive our company forward. Number one is our mission statement, which we crafted to surrender the definition of our success. Nobody does that. Everybody says, we will be the country world's largest, ye wo, etc. What we say is we want to be the country's most preferred creator and provider of service. Preferred by whom? By our residents. If we become the most preferred, we will automatically be the most successful and the biggest and whatever. So we are surrendering the definition of our success to our residents to say, I prefer you over others. Right? The second is our dharma of unconditional love, respect and care. ये तीन चीजें ही चाहिए होती है. Love, which is missing because family went away. Respect, which is missing because kursi went away. And care, because that will be required as we age. But in our business, it needs to be unconditional. ये नहीं कि आज कोई resident चिड़चिड़ा था. It's a word we use only for children or for seniors. चिड़चिड़ा. Never is a 30-year-old चिड़चिड़ा. Right? Our love needs to be unconditional. That's where we come to. And the easiest part, Harbinder, everybody says seniors complain, badi karte hain, sara time complain, bikar karte rehte hain, etc. It's not true. Actually, that's the most forgiving demographic. If you have demonstrated that your niyat is clean, that you desire to please, that you desire to serve, saat khun maaf. It's the single most forgiving demographic in the world. So it's not so complex. The need for trained is actually the need to find and recruit loving people who've been brought up in good families to look after seniors and respect elders. इससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं चाहिए था. बाकी हम सिखा सकते हैं.
You have explained it so beautifully, Mohit, because my follow-up question would have been that elders are demanding, how do you manage your team? But you already beautifully explained this.
It's in our DNA, Ray. We train love, respect, and care out of our DNA. That's the mistake we do in hospitality and in service.
Right. So, Mohit, next comes the government policies. How do the government policies impact this sector? Because you are in real estate, but you are also in a elderly care, senior care business. And what are your asks from the policy makers that can help the sector grow and help companies like you maintain the sincerity with which the sector is growing?
So I hope we will have an opportunity to discuss insurance separately. But within real estate and service, right, I have two requests to the government, because the government is extremely concerned. They're doing a lot of work in this space. But where I really need two places where, if through you and through everybody this message could go. You see, government's norms for a real estate project are based on them being used for mixed family residences. तो FSI कितना होना चाहिए, पार्किंग कितनी चाहिए, schools or colleges के आसपास क्या होना चाहिए. All these things our seniors don't need. They don't need massive houses. They are moving from their massive houses to a smaller house because उसमें तो सिर्फ डस्टिंग करनी पड़ती थी. So if there were two things that I could ask for just on real estate, is one, relax this norm on parking, right? Because the data is only 30% of our residents own cars. And only 30% of that 30% use cars. Baki sirf parked rehti hai. Now, the parking norms, rightfully for residential projects, do require 2-car parks, 3-car parks, basements, and so on and so forth. All of this increases the cost of the project, and that cost has to be recovered from the customer. So, this one change, that a senior living community or a community being designed for seniors need not have, this will bring down the cost of the project straight away. The second requirement that I have, or a request that I have, is all our residents are using human resource for their services even when they're staying in villas. Maid bhi aati hai, cook bhi aata hai, gardener bhi aata hai, chaukidar bhi hai, driver bhi hai. All of these people are part of the unorganized sector. No provident fund, no ESI, no medical insurance, nothing. When they come into us and we are the employers of these people, all of this workforce shifts to the organized sector, which is good for the government, it's good for employment, it's good for everything. But it increases the wage bill for our resident because I have to pay provident fund, ESI, etc. I try and counter that with economies of scale, but then comes an 18% GST. Now, this 18% GST is not being paid anywhere in the unorganized sector. So look at what it is. You have people in the organized sector getting good jobs, protected by labor law, access to a nice environment to work and serve. But who is being penalized for all of this? A demographic which has paid taxes all their life already. Ye 18% GST on services, I think, should be removed or at least brought down to 5%. That's why these two would make a fundamental difference.
Got it. Got it. These are fair asks. Now, you use the word insurance. My next question is related to that. Do insurance companies have a role to play in this sector, since they are usually more focused on sick care? And what do you think needs to be included, and how can insurance impact the industry?
You see, I internationally, living in a senior living community or an assisted living community is covered by insurance, right? I don't think we're ready to reach there as yet. We need to walk before we start to run. And actually, the insurance companies need help over here with regulation from the government. There are two things. You go and buy a scooter or a car, you have to get insurance. You can't drive a car or a scooter without getting insurance. But you can walk around with such a complex machine with no insurance whatsoever. Now, if insurance were to be made mandatory, the scale would bring down the costs. Right? The moment you make it more affordable, people will want to. Imagine how complex the human body is, and 1.4 billion of those machines are walking around uninsured. The car in which they sit must be insured, but that body itself need not be insured. So that's the first fundamental change I ask for. And if you were to do it, it would change things. The second is, I want it almost easy, affordable for seniors to continue to enjoy medical insurance for a longer period of time rather than everything ending at 58. Right? If the biggest worry on people's mind is medical corpus hai ki nahi. Inflation is 6%, medical inflation is much higher. Bank rates are pegged to inflation. But even every year, if inflation and bank rates remain, remember, medical inflation is going above. So the biggest worry about in the minds of a senior is, मैं बीमार हो गया तो क्या हुआ? And the sad part is, बड़े लोग बीमार हुए बिना ही चले जाते हैं और वो पैसा पड़ा रह जाता है. And what they should have used for themselves, they don't use. But if they had insurance, they would have lived a more fulfilling life.
Right. So, Mohit, do you have medical facilities in your communities?
So we have what are called, the following is what is there in every community. 24/7 nurse, visiting doctor, ambulance and ambulance drivers on standby 24/7. But remember, we have a wellness and well-being program under our positive aging philosophy. That means I know you intimately. You see, when you go to a hospital, they say naam, age, blood group, etc. We know all of this about you. Our nurse will look at you and say, please come, let me check. Your color is not looking nice. Our waiter will say to you, kal aap khane bhi kyun nahi aaye? Mirchi zyada khai thi, etc. Right? So we are able to identify problems much earlier. And then we have relationships with the neighboring hospitals, which means, God forbid, if there's an emergency, we can get you from your bed into that bed with all in between things sorted out prior so that you can get to medical attention faster. So daily and emergency, both are covered.
So Mohit, before I let you go, my last question to you is around the business, which is the Columbia Pacific communities, what they are doing in India. What are your plans for 2023 or in the near future? Is there some acquisitions that you're looking at making? Are you looking at raising funds? What is it that we can expect to hear?
So we are very fortunate in the fact that we are funded by the Columbia Pacific Group. So they have given us a war chest to deploy, and our aim is to add about 1,000 homes, or to start developing 1,000 homes, which normally means between 4 to 5 projects every year. Right? So we have the 4 in this year are already on the anvil. The 4 in the coming year. So 2 in Bangalore, 2 in Pune is 22-23. 1 in Hyderabad, 1 or 2 in Hyderabad, 1 in Chennai, 1 in Bangalore, 1 in Calcutta is already sorted out. My feeling is that we may be doing more than the 4 that we've been asked to in 23-24. Then in 23-24, we will be working on 24-25. So that's how we are currently working. And with God's grace, and most importantly, with the blessings of those that we already serve, we will achieve, and we will keep working towards being the most preferred company.
Mohit, it has been such a pleasure speaking to you, because the aspects of senior care and the value systems that get embedded into a real estate business is so beautiful. When you say that you are helping people, creating an environment of positive aging, and your purpose that defines your growth is having happy residents. And with these 2 things, when you're building communities, I think business to chalega. I really thank you for taking our time to speak with us at BW Healthcare World. I personally really enjoyed this conversation. It was a very easygoing conversation. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Harbinder.